formal structured feedback sessions. Okay, so we've gone through our process of the feedback loop so far. We've set our expectations. We've been out there observing. We've been out there measuring. We've been out there checking. Everyone understands what's going on. We've been able to make our informal observations as we go, and we've been able to start providing solutions to those. Now we move to a point that we are going to get to that annual review. Okay, so once a year at least, they should be doing a formal process where it's a clear sit-down, lengthy conversation, really clearing up what's going to happen. And that's your formal review process. Okay? Very important, and it means that because of the nature of it, we really have to do our homework before we sit down and have that conversation. Okay? Obviously, you might have done it, you might have had quarterly checks along the way. The quarter year, the half year, another quarter year goes by, 3/4 mark, okay, you've got to really fix your stuff, and then we get to the annual, okay? So we started with setting the objectives. By the quarter, okay, look, you're on track, but you really need to sort it out. The 6 month is usually a pretty important one because you say, look, this is setting up the back half of the year. By the 3/4 year, you're saying, okay, look, you're either achieving that or you're falling behind or where you are, so that when they get to the annual review, there should be zero mystery whatsoever. No one should have any confusion about what that conversation is going to look like. Everyone should be 100% on deck because you've had a whole year of providing information. If they walk in there and they've got no idea what's going on, you may not have necessarily done your job. Okay, so make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, good managers, we don't do that. All right, so we need to think about the reason we're going to conduct the performance review. And the first thing is it's to document. Okay, that annual review is really about documenting and measuring performance. Okay, so at that stage we know exactly what you've done. We've got a whole year's worth of sheets, we've got all your stats, we've got all your figures, we've got everything we need to have. All those documents are there ready to go. It's there to establish commitment. Okay, we can talk about what's happened over the last year, and we're setting the framework for the 12 months that's going to follow after that. Okay, we can do that, that's the zero. As we look forward, at the 0 mark or at the 1 year, looking towards the 2 year mark, that's our opportunity to reinforce commitment. Their commitment to us and our commitment to them as our staff. Okay, and that's what we want to be doing at that point. The next thing is we want to be able to acknowledge their contribution. Okay, regardless of anything else, we want to talk to them about their contribution. Now that could be a positive contribution, or sometimes it could be the impact of the decisions they made. Okay, but we want to talk to them normally about how they've benefited the company and what's been achieved there and them as a part of it. Okay, once again, we're trying to reinforce good behaviour and identify reasons for underperformance. Okay, without assuming that it's their fault, because it's never about fault. We're not fault finding, we're fault checking. Find out what the problem is so we can fix it. Okay, and then make sure that we line up what their contributions were in light of our organisational goals. Okay, so it allows us to once again restate what we're trying to achieve as a business and make sure that they're really on board with what we're trying to do here and the purpose. Okay, so they know where their job fits in and how they've worked. So before we even start the conversation, we need to think about this documentation, okay, and what's going to happen before the conversation begins. So before the conversation, you've got a few little things to do, and the first thing that you're going to have to do is to get familiar with the job description. Okay, grab a copy of it, start reading it, find out what exactly is it that the job is of that person. If I'm going to talk to someone about whether they've achieved their goals or not achieved their goals, I need to really understand what we set them off to do. What is the job description? Where does it fit in? What are they supposed to be doing day to day? Have they done that, etc.? First thing I need to know is what their job exactly is and not get that wrong. I then need to collate my data. And when I say collate the data, that means gather up all the data and all the information relating to that job that that person has done. So if that's one of my sales staff, I have their weekly sales figures every week for the last 52 weeks. If they weren't there, I've got that information as well, etc. What I also need to do is I need to seek some feedback. Okay, before I speak to the person, there might also be other supervisors or other people that are involved with that person, other stakeholders. I might need to start gathering that information as well to find out what other people's opinions are. I don't want to base all my decisions solely on limited data. I want to get as much information as I can. Okay, the better the information I have, the better the decisions I can make. Okay, and the next thing I need to provide advance notice. Okay, there's no point springing this information on there. There's no point me saying your performance discussion is now. What I need to do is say it's next week, or give them time. Okay, we should have, when we did this, we should have actually identified already, roughly. It shouldn't be a surprise it's coming. We know it's coming. But making sure they've got enough time, the person who we're going to talk to has enough time to get their own information together. They might want to get their own sheets. They might want to get their own feedback, because their conversation to you might be about how they've done very well and they want to present their best case. Same, if there's something wrong and you say, well, what about this? If you're asking them and it's a surprise meeting, they're not going to have a meaningful answer for you. All they're going to say is, I'm going to have to come back to you with that information, otherwise it's a guess. Okay, so we want to allow everyone the correct amount of time to gather up all the facts, both parties, so that we can sit down and have a really meaningful, constructive conversation. If they don't have time to prepare, they're not going to have good answers, and all that's going to happen is it's just going to get confused and no one's going to achieve what they wanted to. So that's what we had to prepare before we even began. Okay, so as you can see, this is a lot of fun. It'll keep you busy for hours. All right. So what happens now? Now, obviously, we're going to have the chat. We're going to have a conversation now, which might not necessarily be the world's most pleasant conversation. But regardless of whether it's a positive or a negative conversation, the first thing I need to do as a manager is to listen, okay? And acknowledge their perspective. So, we've given them the facts. We've told them what's happened. Okay, I set you out to achieve this, and this is where it is. They're obviously going to have some sort of reply. So the first thing we need to do that we've asked them the question is listen to what they have to say. Okay, so listen to the reply, be open, take on board their perspective. The next thing is we need to focus on outcomes. Okay, if it's where it needed to be, fantastic, we're having a pleasant conversation. If it's not where it needs to be, we need to focus on what was the outcome, okay? So what were their strengths, what were their achievements, and at the end of the day, what were the results that were achieved, okay? The next part is we need to make sure we're acknowledging their contributions. Okay, they've contributed to our company, straight up and down. Okay, we know that they've done something, so we can acknowledge that. They did something, they turned up. At the very minimum, we hope. If they haven't turned up, well, that's probably a different conversation. Okay, but we're looking at, well, what did they contribute? And also what mitigating factors might there have been, So what may have happened that, ruined their performance, So we also acknowledge any limitations. Okay, if they're in some sort of, hospitality role and you're doing restaurant renovations, that's really going to affect their ability to do their job. You can't say, well, how come we didn't, have happy customers when the wall's being painted next to your customers? Okay, if there's anything that's going to have limited them or damaged them or their ability to do their job, that's your job to acknowledge. All right, while we're doing this, we ask open questions. Okay. Okay, what we don't want to do is we don't want to railroad people into, why did you do this? Where they can only give limited information. We have to really start asking, okay, so what happened? Okay, it's not where we needed it to be. I'd really like your views on why we haven't achieved those goals. All right, so what we're trying to do there is ask that so they can then provide some feedback. Okay? Don't put words in their mouth. Let them come up with what it is. Okay, you can continue to ask questions about that, but what we're trying not to do is to trap them, limit them, or try and just judge or not give them a fair hearing. All right, so we want to focus on the future as well. And that's the thing about performance discussions, and this is what I found as a manager. When I was having as a manager, when I had my annual chat, it was only 20% about what happened. Okay, we know what happened. We've got a year's worth of statistics. Going back and arguing the point is pointless. 80% of my conversation was about what happens tomorrow, what happens over the next year. Okay, this is a summary. By this stage, you've had a whole year of information. This is a summary at this point. It's 20% on the past, 80% on the future. Okay, so we're talking about the future. What plans are we going to put in place? What coaching we're going to put in place? What targets are we going to put in place? What training are we going to put in place? How is that person going to uplift their performance? It's not about punishing. It's not about getting the stick out and beating people up for an hour. It's about, okay, this is what's happened. This isn't where we need it to be. How do we take it forward? Or, congratulations, this has been fantastic, it's been amazing, you've really contributed, how do we take you forward, and then maybe provide career progression. All right, and the other thing is that we need to focus on the areas of performance, so focus on what didn't work. Okay, so if we've got a shortfall in performance, or if it's got those sort of things, that areas that don't meet or exceed the expectation, we keep it focused on that, about how we're addressing that. Okay, once again, not to beat them with a stick, but to talk about, well, how do we fix it? How do we solve? All right, it turns into a conversation. This all turns into a conversation that summarizes down to the key elements, because there's no surprise, we've had a year's worth of stats, and talks about the future. We start to restate, okay, and talk about future commitment and where we're going to go in the short and medium term. Okay, so we've had this, wasn't where we wanted, so next week we're going to concentrate on this. After 3 months, we're going to have a review, and then we keep going forward, or whatever it happens to be. Okay, it's about the future, short term, medium term, and then the annual. Okay, we invite the employee to express thoughts and feelings. Okay, if they don't feel this is fair or they think we've missed something, we need to gather that now. Don't have them walk out of the room really annoyed because they didn't think they got a fair hearing. Okay, if there's a problem, let them know. Look, man, you tell me what it is. Okay, or if they, maybe they didn't feel comfortable, we've got to fix that. And then lastly, we want to encourage them to keep building on, positive outcomes. All right, so yep, this is what I'll do. We've got agreement. Everyone's on the same page. We're all looking forward. We're moving forward. We've got a list of things that we want to achieve. We've talked about coaching, mentoring, structured forward, okay, to go and achieve those goals. Okay, so, we thank them for coming in. We thank them for contributing. We make sure that they walk out of there with a really clear understanding this was a fair and equitable process where they had an opportunity to be respected and share their, their views on what happened and how they contributed. They've got a very clear plan of what happens next. As I say, it's about removing that confusion, removing it from being a punishment, because it's not about none of this is about punishment. This is all about being positive and how we fix things. Okay, if it turns out to be the case that we can't fix things, that's a different conversation again. Okay, however, what we're really looking to do is get that person back on track, get them achieving for us as a grown adult who's in an adult environment, and then we continue on and we achieve the outcomes we want. Our business turns into a success. Our people listen to us, respect us, and perform for us. If we can do that right, we'll have a great business with happy, switched on staff, and you should have every success.